My late father-in-law was a very gentle man who rarely made a major decision without taking into account the perspectives of others. If there was a decision to be made that would impact the family, he would say, "Let's consult." And just like that, a family council was called. Now, councils are a time-honored means for discerning the way ahead. And in the life of the church, councils have long been understood as a means by which the people of God can listen to the leading of the Holy Spirit, especially when difficult decisions are to be made. Like in today's story, which accounts the proceedings at the very first church council meeting known in history as the Council of Jerusalem. A little background. For over a decade, Paul has been spreading the gospel among the Gentiles. From his home base in Antioch, which is located in what is now Turkey, Paul and Barnabas have been establishing congregations in various cities along of the Mediterranean world, and they've had considerable success, but also considerable opposition. Some of the opposition was from a sect of Jewish Christians called Judaizers who traveled all the way to Antioch from the region of Judea in the south to tell these non-Jewish Christians, these Gentiles, that the requirement for being fully accepted as followers of Jesus is to first incorporate Jewish law and tradition and custom into their lives, which meant that the males must be circumcised. And then the men from Judea had a point. Jesus was a Jew, after all, who embraced his core identity as a child of God, who received the laws from Moses, who was marked by circumcision as a sign of the covenantal relationship that God had with God's people. And so strong were the Judaizers' beliefs about strictly observing Jewish law that they were offended, they were actually grossed out by Gentile Christians who weren't marked as they were. But as we read, Paul and Barnabas strongly disagreed with the requirement that Gentile Christians must be circumcised as Jews in order to be accepted by that early church. And so they said, "Let's consult." So off they went to Jerusalem, where they were received by Christians who had very different perspectives. And that's how that first great council at Jerusalem came to be. Now, as we look at what happened there, we can see the unfolding of a process of faithful discernment and practice where first you consult, second you consider, and third you compromise, all for the sake of carrying out the mission of Christ's church in the world. And it's a very good process that's worth looking at. So first of all, you consult, which means you bring folks of different perspectives together in the same room, around the same table, to discern a way forward. So sitting around the table at that mother church in Jerusalem were some big players. There's Paul and Barnabas and some of the folks from Antioch who passionately voiced their perspective of Gentile Christians. And there's the Jewish Christians, including the Judaizers and the Pharisees and the elder statesmen who convincingly argued that adherence to Jewish law and custom was essential to the integrity of the Christian faith. And also sitting at the table were the apostles, including Simon Peter, who, although he sounds quite positive in this passage, we know from other readings in Paul that he sometimes sat on the fence, and he had preached to Jews and Gentiles, and so he could really see both sides. And then there was James. That's James, the brother of Jesus, who hadn't been part of this whole Jesus movement when his brother was alive, but now he's a key leader in that Jerusalem church. And we know from Paul's letter to the Galatians that James resonated strongly with the argument of the Jewish Christians, and he's chairing the meeting, which means he has a lot of power. So that's quite a gathering, isn't it? The discussion must have been very heated at times, but I find it very impressive that at least everyone was gathered in the same room. You see, getting folks to consult, bringing folks together face to face, eye to eye, person to person is crucial to resolving differences and finding a way forward. When you're by yourself and you're hearing an opposing point of view on television or reading it on social media, it's so easy to dismiss that point of view and the person who expresses it as ridiculous and write them off with a few choice words that I'm not going to repeat. Now, perhaps we've all done it. Posted a nasty comment on Facebook or fired off an angry email, or even ranted to ourselves out loud, saying things that we would never dare say to a person's face. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands if you've done that, okay? The fact is that non-proximity makes it too easy to rudely write someone off. It's a lot harder to write someone off when that person is sitting across the table from you, isn't it? And it's especially harder to do that when, through the lens of Christian faith, you look at someone in the eye and you recognize him as a beloved child of God.